Welcome, history buffs and the curious about the bizarre. Today we dive into the depths of one of the most enigmatic and controversial figures of ancient Rome, Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, better known as Caligula. In the meantime, subscribe to the Story of a Suitor channel if you are passionate about these videos, and leave a like. Now let's start. What kind of man forces his guests to watch him execute a senator at a banquet and then continues to eat as if nothing had happened? Who turns a wedding night into an imperial kidnapping just because he has a crush on the bride? What kind of emperor proclaims himself a living god and threatens to install his own statue in the holiest temple in Jerusalem? This man was Caligula, and he did all this behind closed doors. From the outside, his power seemed absolute, but it was in the privacy of his palace or aboard his private ships, transformed into temples of excess, that Caligula revealed his true face, that of a ruler who answered to no one, not even the gods. His reign was short, but so perverse that it still defies logic today. To understand how he became that monster with the crown, we must go back to the beginning. Because no one is born a Caligula. We become one. Caligula was born on the 31st of August in the year 12 AD in the city of Antium. His full name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, son of the famous General Germanicus and Agrippina the Elder, related by blood to the two most powerful families of the empire, the Julii and the Clodii. His lineage was marked by both glory and tragedy. From an early age, he accompanied his father on military campaigns, and it was there that he received the nickname that would make him immortal, Caligula, which means little shoes. He wore a miniature armor that enchanted the troops. But the sweetness of that nickname contrasted brutally with the future that awaited him. The suspicious death of her father in Syria was a turning point. Many thought he had been murdered on the orders of Sejanus, the feared Praetorian prefect, or even the Emperor Tiberius. Agrippina publicly accused the throne and was then exiled and eventually eliminated. Caligula's older brothers also died. Only he was spared. Perhaps because he was still young, or perhaps because he knew how to remain silent. He was taken to Capri, where he lived under the direct supervision of Tiberius. There, between decadent banquets and deadly political games, he learned that in Rome it was not the just who survived, but the cunning. Years later, when Sejanus fell from grace and was executed, Caligula began to emerge. And when Tiberius died, some say suffocated with a pillow, the young heir became emperor. At first, he was greeted with enthusiasm. He freed prisoners, forgave debts, organized shows. He seemed like a new Augustus. But shortly afterward, he became seriously ill, and when he reappeared in public, he was no longer the same. Something inside him had broken. What followed was not a government. It was a warning to history. When a man with trauma, absolute power, and deep insecurities believes himself to be a god, what happens is no longer politics, but institutionalized madness. After his mysterious illness, Caligula did not return as the emperor acclaimed by the people. He returned convinced that he was something more, not only the most powerful man in Rome, but a living god. And he behaved like one. It was not enough for him to govern. He wanted to be adored, feared, venerated as if he were Jupiter himself. One of his first acts of self-deification was to order that the statues of the most venerated gods be beheaded, and their heads replaced with his own. This gesture, documented by Suetonius, it was not only an act of unheard-of arrogance, but a symbolic declaration of war against the Roman religion itself. In two temples, one of which was physically connected to his imperial residence, he presented himself as a flesh and blood deity. He appeared in public with golden tunics, crowns, incense, and songs. The people watched in silence this dangerous parody of the imperial cult. But there was a limit that not even the Romans dared to cross: the Temple of Jerusalem. Caligula ordered that a statue of himself be placed in the holiest place in Judaism, where carved images were strictly forbidden. The indignation in Judea was immediate. A revolt seemed inevitable. Only the intervention of Herod Agrippa III, a childhood friend of the emperor, managed to make him withdraw the order. Meanwhile, at the heart of the empire, his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. One of the most surreal episodes was the so-called War against Neptune. During a campaign on the northern coast of Gaul, Caligula ordered his soldiers to line up facing the sea and attack the waves with drawn swords. At the end, he ordered them to collect shells, presenting them as war trophies. According to Suetonius, he celebrated this victory with a parade in Rome. Political satire, pure madness, or a symbolic attempt to dominate even the gods? Whatever the answer, the message was clear. Caligula no longer lived in the real world. His obsession with divine power was tied to his most human insecurities. Suetonius describes him as a sickly-looking man, pale, with thin legs, a hairy neck, and bald from a young age. His dark, sunken eyes gave him a sinister look. He was said to fly into a rage if anyone said the word goat, a common insult to his appearance. He even issued a decree that forbade anyone from standing on top of him in public to avoid showing his baldness. His vanity was such that, according to the chronicles, he spent hours in front of the mirror, making threatening expressions. He wanted his face to inspire fear, even without speaking. He wanted to look like a god, even though deep down he feared he was just a small man, dressed up as a monster. The line between spectacle and sadism disappeared completely. What was supposed to be entertainment for the Roman people became the stage for his absolute power. Unlike other emperors, Caligula transformed gladiatorial games into rituals of domination. He chose who would fight, who would die, and sometimes who, among the audience, would be thrown into the arena. According to Suetonius, if a guest bored or annoyed him, he would point at him and order him to fight. No one was safe. Once, he himself went down into the arena to face a gladiator named Mumio. It was all staged. The gladiator had a wooden sword. But when he surrendered on his knees, Caligula took out a real dagger and killed him in front of the crowd. Then he marched out triumphantly as if he had won a war. Even banquets were the scene of his perverse power. Extreme luxury, expensive wines, non-stop music. But a smile from him was enough to change everything. A senator's wife, a servant, a nobleman. Anyone could be forced to satisfy him. And then he would return to the room and tell the details, laughing, humiliating the victims as part of the menu. He once fell in love with the wife of an ally at a dinner party. He took her away, then returned proclaiming that he had married her in the manner of Romulus. The man could only nod. The emperor's will was law. Even on the water, Caligula took excess to extremes. He built 2 enormous palace ships on Lake Nemi, with marble, gardens, baths, statues, and orgy halls. When they were found by modern archaeologists, it turned out they were no legend. Caligula's madness was real, and it all happened behind closed doors. More than losing power, Caligula feared not being remembered as someone superior. For this reason, he did not limit himself to destroying his enemies. He also wanted to ridicule the most sacred institutions of Rome, such as the Senate. He made them wait for hours, imposed applause for absurd speeches, and humiliated them publicly. But nothing was as symbolically offensive as his famous horse Incitatus. He built him a marble stable, personal servants, golden cups, and announced, seriously or madly, that he would make him consul. For many historians, it was not just eccentricity, but a direct attack. The Senate was so useless that even a horse could replace it. Rumors about him increased. The most scandalous, a possible incestuous relationship with his sister Drusilla, whom he honored as a goddess after her death. There is no certain proof, but his public and ambiguous behavior fueled the Roman disease. Sometimes he dressed as a woman, as an oriental deity, even as Venus. In a society like the Roman one, where clothing represented role and gender, these gestures were not fashion, but defiance. Caligula did not want to resemble the gods, he wanted to replace them. But not even terror can maintain a regime forever. Only 4 years after coming to power in 41 AD, he was brutally murdered in a corridor of the palace by a group of Praetorians led by Cassius Chaerea, one of the officers he had most humiliated. His wife and daughter were also killed. The Senate attempted to restore the Republic, but the Praetorians had already proclaimed Claudius emperor. Caligula was dead, but not his legend. Even today, his name is synonymous with imperial madness, with limitless abuse, with a reign that brought Rome to the brink of institutional collapse. His figure is studied, feared, discussed. But beyond the myth, one thing is certain. Absolute power in the hands of an unstable man can transform an empire into a personal scenario of terror. That's all for today. And what do you think of this story? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like these videos. See you next time. Bye.